Welcome to this webinar with Ficolo and ISG. So my name is Kim Gunnelius. I'm co-founder and CCO of Ficolo. Been with Ficolo from the start, and it's been growing from the roots in colocation to expanding cloud delivery and connectivity and private cloud management. And very happy today to work with ISG. So a few months ago, we were contacted by ISG, who are analyzing the Nordic colocation market. And we've been through a process with them and look very much forward to hearing the ISG analyst, Manoj Chandra to give their opinion on the Nordic colocation market and Ficolo's role in it. So before we start, just one practicality. So there will be an option to ask a question. So you should have a button where you can have, where it says Q&A and a question mark. And you can pop your question into there, and we will look at the questions once the is finished. But without further ado, please, Manoj, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kim, for setting up the whole tone about the webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants who ever joined from whichever part of the world. Very excited to talk about Ficolo in the seminar. In the next 30 minutes, we will be covering the multiple dimension about the study and how the Ficolo positioning has stood out very strongly in the region. You might face a network drop or breaking of my voice issue, but within few fraction of second, we can sort of wrap this up. So we will make sure that I will be back soon. So please stay tuned for the next 30 minutes. And with that, I would again welcome to all of you that you have joined and have sort of taken the time to know about the Ficolo as to how Ficolo is doing in the Nordics market. So let me just give you about the brief introduction about me. I am Manoj Chandra Jha, and I work for the organization called ISG, basically Information Services Group. We have a headquarter in the US, basically San Francisco, and we have a research operation office in India, Bangalore, and I operate from the Bangalore office. Primarily, my responsibility is to target the Nordics and the UK market from cloud, data center, public cloud, and hyperconverged and co-location services front. And if you look at the first slide, it says that next generation private hybrid cloud data center solution and services. In this study, we have brought in the 5 different quadrants. As we move further, I would talk about as to how we have sort of executed the whole study. If you look at the agenda, these are the 5 topics which will be covered as a part of today's session. One is the introduction about ISG provider lens. Second would be IPL provider lens positioning, and that's where we are going to talk about how Ficolo positioning has stood out very strongly in the Nordics market in the co-location business. Third would be the key trends, wherein I would request Kim to share his perspective, his thought as to what he sees in the market. And then one of the point which is very, very interesting for all of you to know about how Ficolo is trending and working in terms of competitors' view and key takeaways, and then we will sort of open the forum for 5 minutes for question and answer. If in case you wish to drop a note to Kim or Sana, I will take up your questions offline also. So please feel free to share your questions throughout the discussion, and if not, maybe we can take up your questions over the email. With that, I'm moving to the next slide. ISG, if you look at the overall ISG portfolio, we have got almost more than 23 plus studies in these seven different geography. We have a huge US market, Switzerland market, UK, Nordics, and Germany. Uh, People ask me, Manoj, how do you perceive Nordics market? Every time I tell them, to me, Nordics is a second Silicon Valley, wherein the global market has brought in a deeper attention, and there are multiple angles to look at it. And hence you see almost 23 studies are happening in the Nordics market every year or twice in a year, just to make sure that organization like Ficolo should get the visibility in front of the large global enterprise clients, because we fundamentally believe the providers who are born in that specific region, they understood much better dynamics, the behavior of the business, than anybody else who does the business in the Nordics market coming from the outside of the Nordics. I would talk about few general perception about Ficolo as to what we have seen about Ficolo in throughout the study. One of the point which has come out very interestingly about the Ficolo, that Ficolo is actually becoming one of the strong emerging colocation provider in the region. Uh, Absolutely. I mean, when I had a multiple discussion with the Kim and its team, I mean, it was astonishing to know that the organization who are driving the value for the enterprise client in the Nordics market is all set to increase the market footprint in the Baltics and the international market too. I would not talk about the data center location. I'm sure that you guys are aware of it. One of the fantastic things which has happened in the recent past is that the Ficolo acquired the Fujitsu data center, and that data center is being converted into the colocation. And this is not only the colocation, it's a very deep convergence of the colocation services and cloud delivery center with the help of certain automation technologies. Our growth is been tremendous, almost 50 plus revenue growth back in 2019. Balance sheet looks absolutely strong at this point of time. The one thing which has kind of brought in a very good amount of percentage for Ficolo in this study is the partnership with the Megaport that has almost strengthened its position in the overall market. Yeah, I mean, from the award per se, the organization has got the finalist list in the merger and acquisition of the year category. I think that's fantastic to know that Nordics is the market where we see a good amount of traction happening in terms of merger and acquisition, consolidation, and whatnot in that space. Uh, from the portfolio per se, the organization is not only offer the colocation, they also offer the connectivity, make sure that the enterprise who wants to leverage on the colocation can go for the hybrid multi-cloud solution along with the centralized and integrated sort of management platform. And then again, seeing the emergence of the global data distribution across the globe, security always becomes a mainstream in any business. And we have seen throughout the various case studies and the intensive focus of Ficolo in the security space. And I think the combination of these 3-4 portfolio ecosystem is helping Ficolo to grow much bigger and better in the region than ever before. I would go to the next slide. So let's talk about why we felt as to Ficolo has stood out as a leader in the market, because the general perception which I talked about, there's a very strong rationale about this. So this study is basically a next generation hybrid cloud data center solution. We have covered 5 different geography in that, and one of the geography is Nordics, and then you have UK, Germany, Switzerland, Brazil, and US. This is the 3rd consecutive year wherein we are doing this study, but for the Nordics market, this is the first time we have executed this study, because we see there's a huge potential and the focus on the colocation market in the Nordics region. These are the 5 different quadrants which we executed, and Ficolo rightly fits into the colocation services. However, we have done the execution for the managed services for Nordics market, hosting business, data center security products, and hyper-converged system. Uh, if you look at this overall provider positioning, there are a set of providers very locally working in the Nordics market and also working with the large players. But then what has stood out for the Ficolo is that 2 things. Ficolo extremely believe in engaging with the advisors and the analysts because this partner ecosystem helps Ficolo to sort of bring the visibility in front of the large enterprise client, because it's not only about the technology partner ecosystem or the vendor partner ecosystem. It's also about involving the larger aspect of the marketing business, wherein Ficolo sort of gets the visibility. These are the set of providers which you see. They have participated actively, inactively in terms of primary and the secondary research. So basically what happens in this exercise, we sent across the uh, questionnaires and the survey form to the all providers. It's a centralized portal. They can go ahead and feed the information, and if at all they are sort of not able to fill the information, they can also give us the briefing directly. And then we have got our own research analyst who keeps off tracking the market throughout the year about the providers. So if you look at the positioning of Ficolo, I mean, uh, there are multiple colocation provider which you see, and I'm sure that you must be thinking there are a couple of the US providers, and then in the leader segment you see the Ficolo has been positioned as leader. And the reason why their positioning has stood out so strongly in the region is that because of the strong portfolio attractiveness and the competitive strength. This means that we almost cover 58 plus different parameters to evaluate the providers in the study. One is the overall market positioning in terms of revenue and growth. Second, the provider degree of awareness, overall customer satisfaction, the business model, the sustainability, stability business ecosystem for the entire year. The y-axis talks about overall portfolio, basically depth and the breadth of the overall portfolio, the quality of the enable the enterprise client, the core unique service proposition, overall security ecosystem, and how the organization sees the overall product roadmap and thought leadership. I think the combination of this thing, wherein Ficolo has given a very incredible information to us, and that has led to this fantastic position in the region. So basically what happens as a part of this study, we request providers to fill the questionnaires, come on the call with the leadership and give us the presentation. Then we do a brainstorming, and then we also expect a lot of great success stories which they have already executed in the recent past. And with that, we see the Ficolo has stood out a very in a great position in the Nordics market. So from the trend perspective, uh, while the positioning has stood out very strong, we always feel that the provider should always align with the trends as to what is the demand of the enterprise clients in the Nordics market, and how the colocation providers are sort of enabling their strategy to drive the multi-cloud journey. I think I will take a pause now, and I would request Kim to share his perspective and thought about the trends, and then we can proceed further. Kim, please.
ISG and look at the kind of PHCDC, private hybrid cloud data center market development, and I think we align well with ISG's thoughts and see a kind of, shall we say, in a form of convergence. So previously, companies were going down separate tracks, one towards a public cloud and another towards a private cloud. But now we see a convergence where all of the organizations are using all of the different kinds of clouds, whether by choice or then sometimes it just the organization chooses to move in different directions. The one trend that I would like to highlight that I don't see on these slides is the trend for high performance computing. So HPC is really something that is taking off in the Nordics. So HPC is one of the kind of international tracks we have. So locally in Finland, typically we talk to IT service providers and software companies, and they require quite a broad cloud delivery portfolio. Then if we talk to companies requiring high performance computing, these will typically be, they could be, for instance, a large German enterprise, say in the automotive sector, or they could be a UK financial house. They have very different requirements. They're looking at the greenness of the energy and the availability, because, for instance, in London, you can't get, if you want 10 megawatts of green energy, you can't get it. So that's really one of the areas where we need to focus. I completely agree with the hyperscale part. We need to start addressing the US hyperscalers that are looking for, they're insatiable, it seems, that they're looking for more and more capacity. But one of the interesting things is also Asia. I mean, there's the cloud business in China, for instance, is huge. It is almost as big, if not bigger, than the US market. And while many of those companies are serving only the Chinese market or only a little bit outside, many companies there are starting to look outside, and we think that Finland is a great place for them to serve the European market. So looking very, very much forward to start looking at that area. The way I see the market and what makes you strong in the market is that a data center needs to be technically good, of course, but it also needs to have financial backing, and it needs to be ready to go into new areas. And one of the areas where we've been particularly successful, as Manoj discussed already, is the M&A or sale and leaseback. So that's another very interesting area to us. So we built up a capability of doing the sale and leaseback transactions. That means that we can actually buy a data center of existing enterprises and lease it back to them, because many enterprises are saying that it's difficult to get the personnel to operate the data center. You might have one or two guys, and what happens if one of them leaves the company? So we see that as a very important trend, and at this time, the competition actually in the Nordic market is not so strong in this area. So I think Manoj also has found in the analysis that this is something that we should market much more strongly in the Nordics. In fact, one of the questions he asked me, was that does every enterprise in the Nordics know that we do these sale and leasebacks? And I said no. So maybe that is something, a marketing aspect that we need to work on. So yeah, if you look at the data centers, the additional parts of the strength is, of course, the marketing. How do we reach all these customers? Because we're not a consumer company. We're kind of a B2B2B, so we're way behind. So what are the channels? And that's a continuous challenge, of course. But anyway, so that's my view on the key trends in the Nordics and how we see those things. And really happy, of course, to be that Ficolo has been named the leader in the colocation space here. And with that, I'll give it back to Manoj.
Thank you so much, Kim. I think you have brought in a very deeper nuances about the market dynamics in the colocation space. I think what you have talked about, that is exactly what basically ISG sees in the region. I think in the interest of time, because we have just left over with the 7 minutes, I will kind of accelerate the presentation, and then if there's a question, we will take this up in the last 2 minutes. Would that be okay?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. I mean, very few organization says to me, Manoj, let's not talk about the comparison with the competitors. And when I was asking Kim, do you want me to keep this slide in for the stakeholders? He said, please go ahead. And I believe in the transparency and the visibility, because that is the way to drive the value for my customer. I think that's a very positive side of what I see about the Ficolo. There are almost 10 parameters if you look at the left side, right from the strategy and vision to the portfolio, service delivery capabilities and experience. I think couple of observation where if you see the Ficolo differentiation and the opportunities, I mean, it's overall cloud delivery center and the co-location ecosystem which they have built in, the cloud management platform, and then the seamless integration with the hyperscalers using Megaport. I think that's the differentiator which see about the Ficolo in the region. There are perhaps a headroom for the improvement, which are possibly or do a strong marketing strategy. Competitors have a strong IoT and the edge computing solution, and that's where we see that the Ficolo has already started focus on working with the US hyperscalers, and I think in the near future, in the coming 3 to 4 quarters, we would hear a couple of more announcement that Ficolo has sort of done the partnership in that segment too. Maybe a vertical is something that's where we need to give a little more focus, because one of the trend in the previous slide I talked about the cryptocurrency data center, and in the Nordics we see the BFSI segment is kind of flourishing. The all NASDAQ listed company, basically American companies, they want to tie up or do a partnership or acquisition or merger with the Nordics based BFSI organizations. So I think that would certainly lead to the demand of cryptocurrency sort of colocation center, and then IoT, and again become a integral part of it. Sales and marketing, again, as I was talking to Kim, I mean, I understood that Kim has already taken a multiple initiative in the region, and he is working with the larger ecosystem in terms of making sure that Ficolo niche work should reach out to the all enterprise client, because end of the day, it's not about size every time, because sometimes the niche work which you do in a specific technology segment and you derive the actual value for the enterprise client actually makes sense than to come to the enterprise client with the larger scale. So I think as the Ficolo moves further in the future, the scale will automatically increase, but then the niche and the unique value proposition what it holds for the enterprise client, I think that is something which is bringing a value for the client, and Ficolo is getting a more and more sort of market share in the colocation space. Few more parameters I would kind of move on to the next slide. Key takeaways. So we had a very deep discussion with our advisors in the Nordics market and in the European market. along with our study and the research through primary and secondary. Advisor view, Ficolo should start interacting with the multiple advisors, because if you know about the ISG has a great focus in terms of driving the large insourcing and outsourcing engagement across the globe. Basically, more than 65% of the outsourcing deals happens across the globe through ISG advisors. And as they know more about the Ficolo, it will be a great for the Ficolo, and perhaps it will lead to, Ficolo participating in the large number of RFPs and RFI in the Nordics market, entire European market, and perhaps the Finnish market too in the larger ecosystem. Analyst view, that's my own view. Robust colocation portfolio which Ficolo has got, but it has to be little titled up and tied up in a very different bundle package model, and perhaps the marketing clarity has to go to the client in a very niche manner. Otherwise, absolutely great in terms of portfolio attractiveness and the competitive strength. PR and the marketing perhaps would help Ficolo to get the more visibility, not only in the Nordics market, but in the larger global market too. Customer views, we had a two-way of doing this study. One, we got couple of case studies from Kim and team, and then we have also done the secondary execution research. And then what we understood that Ficolo, enterprise client says that Ficolo is improving its overall portfolio. The organization has strong customer experience focus. Today, whatever you do with the technology, if you do not retain and sustain the customer excellence on top priority, trust me, sooner or later there will be a damage in the relationship. And that is what has come out very strongly for the Ficolo, that enterprise client says Ficolo has got a very, very strong customer experience. Competition views, for the last 1 week, I have been talking to all the Nordics colocation providers as a part of the briefing. And we kind of get a direct, indirect indication that Ficolo is gaining actually deeper traction in the Finnish location colo market. And in fact, in the last couple of years, the organization has emerged a very strong provider in the region. However, there is a headroom for any organization to improve and increase the market share. And I'm very positive and optimistic about Ficolo, that Ficolo would flourish and expand its footprint, not only the Finnish market, not only the Nordics market, but in the entire European and the global market too. With that, I will take a pause. I think we are on time, on time, sharp at 7 o'clock, and we are done with the webinar. I will take a pause and let me know if there's a question